With us, this is now the time of talking about the future. We had a very long conversation about how beautiful interoperability is and how much good it does. And now we've been picking the brain of four very brilliant, intelligent, and very proactive people to tell us how the future of interoperability is. So let me go very quickly around the panel to introduce the speakers, and I will start from the extreme left of the chair seating. And with us is Carlos Zorrinho, who is a member of Parliament, of the European Parliament, a very experienced senior government official in Portugal, but also with an academic background, so I hope you can bring us the two things together. Next to him is Cristian Cucu, who is the first government chief information officer of Romania. He will also inherit the work of the presidency very soon and has a long experience in the private sector on IT issues, so we pick his brain. Next is Anna Karjalainen, and she's a member of the Committee of Regions. She sits in a very important committee, the SEDEC committee, which deals with education, social policy, and IT, and she's responsible for many important dossiers, including a digital program, broadband platforms, and other important elements of the digital transformation. And last and not least, Peter, who you have seen already. So he's sitting now with the hat of the Austrian presidency, still for a few weeks, and so we will also ask him to tell us how he sees the future of interoperability. So we'll have two quick rounds. First round, I will ask all of you to tell us from your perspective, from your political angle and your responsibility, what is important about the interoperability, also based on what you discussed. And we will start with Carlos, and we'll go towards me on the right. Carlos, please.
Thank you, Emanuele. Thank you for this opportunity, for this invitation to be part, to participate in this important midterm conference. I was the rapporteur of ISA² in the Parliament. So ISA² is in part my baby, and it is very helpful for me to see that it is growing quite well. But even with our children, you want also to do best and to understand what they need. So I think that this program could be adapted for the second term. And most important, it's very important to prepare the link with the future programs that are discussed now. I'm also the shadow rapporteur in the Digital Europe program. The Digital Europe program, as you know, there are 5 priorities. One of the priorities is the interoperability. And the program is approved with a strong majority in the ITRE committee last week. And you are now working to try to vote in the plenary of December in Strasbourg. At the same time, the Horizon Europe and also the Digital Europe. It will be very important. And let me tell you that my feeling is that when we look into the European Union political project, you are arriving to a new cycle, to elections in the end of May, we realize that in this time of digital disruption, the European project will be interoperable or dead. The key issue is the interoperability in different platforms between our local communities, our regions, our countries, people. And this idea drives us to different declinations. For example, in the digital program, interoperability is one of the 5 priorities. But make any sense to develop high-performance computing networks without strong interoperability? Make any sense to develop a real cybersecurity scheme without interoperability? Even the most challenge, AI, artificial intelligence, as a tool to improve the quality of life and European values, need to be linked with services, with interoperable systems. And to finish, because I have only 5 minutes, with the political stagnation now in the most important common European priorities, for instance, the European Monetary Union, the MFF. I think that our hope to progress is the reinforced cooperations. Some formal reinforced cooperations that did interoperability, even the Euro, Schengen, and others, the future European Defense Network, but also informal reinforced cooperations. In the European Parliament, I work also in the ENVI committee, and you are developing cooperation, for instance, in medicines, in health. This is a national competence, but there are a lot of things that with data and with cooperation, with interoperability, you can achieve to give to citizens. So, things like fiscal cooperation, safety cooperation, health cooperation, training cooperation. For instance, I was also rapporteur for governance and the governance of energy. It's a template that needs interoperability. It's a template with European targets and national policies. All of that kind of cooperation, to be successful, needs strong interoperability and you need to say that without fear. So, in these times of digital disruption, the European Union will be interoperable or dead. I prefer to have it alive.
Thanks, Carlos. This is a very good statement, and we should use it also in our communication line. So now over to Cristian, from your perspective of master of the digital agenda of Romania. How do you see your interoperability?
Hello, everybody, and it's a true honor to participate in this conference and in this great panel. Interoperability, I was thinking and had earlier discussions. Maybe we can talk about interop, and that should be easier for us to pronounce. It seems that implementing it is just as tough as it is to pronounce it. So maybe that's the root cause of the problem. We've seen throughout the meeting, the CIO meeting in Austria, how mobile government is trying to take advantage of the simplicity of services put into the hands of the citizens. And Estonians were mentioning TV sets and autonomous vehicles. I hope that the cars would actually focus on driving and not allowing citizens to interact with government during driving. But anyhow, it's obviously that for citizens, this is something very simple. And it needs to be very simple. All the things that surround the citizens these days, it's made as simple as possible. And we can also, being IT guys, we all remember the books, IT for Dummies. So everything needs to be explained and put in the hands of the citizens in a very, very simplistic manner. What lies behind the scenes, that's where we all intervene, and that's where the hard part starts. I was trying to understand, at least in Romania, but I'm sure that this applies to many other countries. What are the main barriers for us to be able to use this definition of interoperability as a simple form of interaction between citizens and government? And what are the barriers behind it? And I think the biggest one, and unfortunately, I haven't seen it addressed throughout the financing from the Commission, is the legacy systems and the legacy applications, and also the legacy legislation. And I'll start with the legacy legislation. I think from the 90s and the 2000s, all countries have adopted a whole bunch of I don't know, several degrees of legislation around IT. And all that legislation has actually proven to be rather a barrier in the development of adopting technology inside governments than a facilitator for new technologies and for agile, progressive thinking within governments. And I'm looking at our legislation process. how difficult it is for us to implement EID. Well, it's very difficult. We have to modify like 100 laws where standard plastic IDs need to be in that shape and format, be utilized in order to interact with the government. So we created our own barriers through legacy legislation. Now, another point is around legacy systems. Again, around 90s and 2000, we've built incredibly massive and critical application servers, which are now in production. And we look at them with those eyes that we don't want to get near them so that nothing will happen with those critical apps. It is very difficult to shift those applications and shift those services from the existing systems into cloud and to facilitate web services in such a way that would be consistent with the citizens' expectations. So I think these are the two main barriers that I've identified. Now, behind that, of course, it's a political sponsorship, and it's a political understanding of the needs to change all of these legacy systems. And not everybody understands IT, not everybody understands digital transformation. It's very difficult to explain, and it's very difficult for them to understand and be the promoter of change. Even if they understand, they will not be the leading force behind a digital transformation unless they truly believe in that. And I think there are very, very few leaders in the world that truly understand digital transformation and will be behind every action that is required in order to substantially modify our current and existing systems. And I'm hoping to see support from the European Union in terms of coming forward with legislations that encourage new technologies to be adopted within governments, that are offering support and financial support for governments to change their legacy systems and to change their legacy legislation. And also, another thing that is lacking, and I think I've bumped into it several times, is we're missing NIST. The US has a very powerful source for norms and standards within IT. We don't have such a body within EU. We have national bodies, some are stronger than others. We have some internal bodies like ISA, which is dealing with IT security, but we don't have a comprehensive measurement or a comprehensive way of setting standards and norms across all European countries. For example, around taxonomy, which is a key component of interoperability. How would we do it cross-border if we don't have an overarching set of standards that will be imposed to all the country members, or not necessarily imposed, but a reference set, like with the EIDAS, right? There has been, and the DigiDigit has helped a lot in making some light where there is only darkness around standards and norms. I think DigiDigit may have a much greater role in supporting governments understanding what norms can be accomplished across EU and how the systems can actually be made throughout standardization to work much better cross-border. We have EIDAS, which is a great starting set that will allow us cross-authentication. We have the concepts of once only, which should be the main support function for such standards. So there is nothing actually stopping us for moving towards more technical norms in correlation with all the countries. So just one more thing, and I'll pass the word. We have 24 languages within EU, and we have probably not only 24 mindsets. Every country is looking at taxonomy completely different, and that's what actually enriches the EU. Right, having this diversity and having the ability for all these countries to come together in a common market. at one point we have to take advantage of this diversity, but on the other point we need to make a little bit of visibility throughout all this diversity, if we want to make lasagna out of spaghetti.
Thank you, and thanks for addressing the issue of legacy. We should address the past legacy and not create new ones. And your vast experience on the local and regional governments administration, how do you see interoperability from your perspective?
Thank you. It's been very nice to participate today here in seminar. I'm very happy to hear and see all the work that you have done across Europe. I have tried to write down notes so that I can try to explain all this when I go back home to Finland, or maybe next week when we have a plenary session here in Brussels. I come from Helsinki Uusimaa district. I'm a city council, and I need to tell that in City Council we don't discuss digital services or digital at all. And that's why if I will ask from my colleagues that what is interoperability is, they don't understand it at all. But if I ask them that, would it be nice if you travel next time from Helsinki to Tallinn, Estonia, that you can use e-descriptions? Then they said, oh, that would be nice. Or if I just said that you can go to the suomi.fi and you can, for example, exchange messages with authorities, or you can authorize another person, and so on. So they will understand it. Or I can say that sharing information is a key action in the fight against terrorism and organized crime. So my job is to explain all this, or at least part of this, to citizens mostly in Finland, in my hometown, but of course that is the work what we are doing in the committee or region. We 350 members. We are the voice of the European Union in our hometowns and cities.
Thank you, Anne. And now over to Peter. So your reflection after almost 6 months at the helm of the council.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, on the interoperability issue, I wouldn't have to add much more. Actually, we heard all the very important issues here. In my view, it is exactly what you said at the end. The task is to sell interoperability by conveying the benefit for the citizens, the benefit for administration, the benefit for enterprises, for the business sector. Interoperability as such is not a self-standing value, but it is enabling simpler, more efficient, effective services, and brings added value to the users. So, and I think this is very important. So also what Cristian said with the simplicity, services need to be intuitive, so that the user needs to be in the center. And actually, he doesn't really care about whether this is interoperable, or not, but whether it's easy to use. And for instance, data doesn't need to be given a second time, etc. This requires interoperability in the background, but it is not visible for the user as such, so it is hard to really sell it. For the political level, you rather need to sell the benefits for the users there. I accompanied IDA BC
ISA and ISA² through the years, so I had the privilege to be part of the discussions legally as well as then in the committees, etc. So I'm of course a fan of that institution and of interoperability as such, but it is still not an easy task to convince the political level about what about disease. So it's really the added value you have to bring in. Also internally, within the administration, I give you a small example. In Austria, within Austria, we do have a so-called portal group, which means that we have decentralized authorization for the staff of the different public administrations, and they can have a single sign-on and log in to their portal, and with that they can enter the services throughout Austria, more or less within the public administration, and it's not based on the central system, but is decentralized, so authorization is given by the institution itself internally. So they are authorizing their own users, and there is a circle of trust, so to say, between the different authorities. And for authority one, it's only necessary to trust that users of authority two can access, and who disease actually is the decision of authority two. So they are administrating their users, and that gives access currently to 1,300 services. So actually this is the added value of the users. They use different systems from their municipality, from the federal level, from ministries, etc. But they don't need to have hundreds of EID usages or different user IDs, passwords, whatsoever, but they are using that because there is an interoperable system behind that. We would, by the way, love to connect this one to the EU system, ECAS and EU login, so that's what we already tried to prototype once, and we could only plead for continuing that work. For the future work, actually, mobile, as I already mentioned in my words in the morning, mobile first, and mobile needs to be tackled because this is something we need to include in our work. And also, of course, everything which is the current emerging trends and buzzwords like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and you name it. So this, I'm pretty sure, will be taken on board by the Commission in the future work of ISA² during that term, and also in the longer run than for the next period, so to say. Should I stop here, or should I already give some way to?
Maybe we can start already the second round very quickly. So 1 minute each. Just wonderful. What are the two top trends for the future, the top priorities, particularly for the new MFF digital program? So you start and we go.
Very good. Thank you very much. This opens the opportunity to once again address the Digital Europe program. I had the privilege to chair the Telecoms Working Party in the Council on that topic, and I am very happy that we could proceed very quickly with that dossier. So we finished work in the Council Working Group, and we had the COREPER meeting yesterday evening on the Digital Europe program, which means that we will hopefully pass a partial general approach on the Digital Europe program next Tuesday in the Telecoms Council. The Digital Europe program, we already mentioned several times, has the 5 key issues there, the specific objectives, and specific objective 5 addresses exactly interoperability as such. I can only recommend to have a look into the new document. Of course, as it's the material of the Council, it's already publicly available. So there is Annex 1 giving a bit more feeling of what the first work program will be about. So that gives a glimpse of an idea which kind of elements would be covered in the future Digital Europe program in the specific objective on deployment, best use of digital capacities and interoperability. So there is the modernization of public administration chapter there, and you will find lots of wonderful ideas there, and we are looking forward to it for the implementation. Of course, this depends on the political agreement with the co-legislator, which means that after the partial general approach to be concluded next week, trilogues will then start smoothly under the Romanian presidency. I will not go into detail for the moment here. So we are looking very much forward to that one. And by this, I stop here and
Thanks very much, Peter. And in 1 minute, how does the future priority look like?
Well, the panelists, you have mentioned this Digital Europe program. And next week in our plenary session, we started to debate on that. The key question is how to make the Digital Europe program to be so attractive that cities and regions with their industries and citizens speed up the European-wide digital. This requires EU-wide interoperability and access to data, technology and know-how. And the other one, this week in our SEDEC committee, we started to debate on the initiative of the artificial intelligence. And I'm sure that in local and regional level, politicians, we are very interested on that. So please go on with that one. So that's the future.
Thank you, and thanks for your support. Cristian.
I'll try to address a little bit more about how I see this future interaction, and as fast as I can. We have on one side the rise of AI, the rise of data lakes, and the rise at the same time of open data. So we see a lot of pressure on the government through open data to put a lot of information into availability mode. And at the same time, AI is rising and is trying to make use of that data. And I think this cycle will actually increase, and we will have a spiral of predictive analysis and a market of data representation. And this will lead into governments having a lot of pressure into delivering real-time analytics on top of the data that they put out. And we will see a spiral of co-creation with citizens that are demanding specific access to specific data, and governments needing to be able to answer those requirements. And I think at this moment in time, Europe is lacking a brain, is lacking, for example, DeepMind that was within UK and sold to Google. We need a strong engine and we need a strong ecosystem on top of which we need to start developing artificial intelligence applications and use cases for governments. So maybe this is a good focus for the next legislation within EU in trying to identify our next brain and our next ecosystem around this.
Thank you, Cristian. Carlos, help me wrap it up.
I have so many ideas for the future, but within 1 minute I will choose one that is perhaps the most provocative. But I think we need really to develop, to promote interoperability, to link the citizens with the European project. And that is my dream. When I look to the initiatives like the Wi-Fi for You, I was also the rapporteur in the European Parliament of the Wi-Fi for You initiative. I'm now very disappointed with the delivery. I think that it will be possible to launch the connections. But for me, the Wi-Fi for you is not 8,000 of high-level connections. It's a real network. It's something like the Austrian portal that Peter explained us. What I want to have, it's a European portal with European services, with European values, with that you can develop and deliver there. European Union is a multicultural partnership, local, regional, national, European, and global partnership. We share values and identities. Our identity is the result of the merge of multiple identities aggregated by common values. It's not easy for me to understand why we decide to have common values, common law in an analogical society, and you are open to don't think about that in digital society. No, you need to have also in the digital society the same values and the same principles that are our base. So we need to create a European digital identity to deal with interoperability, to deal with cybersecurity, to deal with ethical artificial intelligence, to deal with fake news or good news, electronic commerce, fiscal control, all about that. Because the future will be extraordinary. The digital revolution will be good if it's used for good purposes, and catastrophic if it is used for a few to control all the others. So this is really our challenge about the future, to be good with strong ethical identity to win the global challenge.
Thanks, Carlos, for bringing the discussion also on the ethics, because I think we are really fusing the technology challenges, but the human-centric approach to technology, which is very much characteristics of our vision. We have sketched elements of a vision for the future, but my message is that the future is now, as someone would say, because we cannot wait for the Digital Europe program to start moving to action, although we will be making work together to make sure that when it starts full speed. We need to start now, and we have instruments like ISA that are already, let's say, well activated, instruments like CEF, Horizon, and other programs that can contribute to that vision. So with that, I would like to thank our speakers also for staying within the time, and pass the mic to our chair for the next step.